All right, good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited, and welcome to This Week in Pop Culture, the show in which we give you the goings-on in the world of pop culture in the past said week, whether we're talking about film and TV, tech news, sports news, entertainment business, and the like. We try to bring you up to speed so that way you are not left in the wind. And as always, I'm not going to be alone in talking about today's said topic. So without further ado, I want to welcome my co-host, Mr. Spillman Trueheart, aka Spills. What is going on, sir?
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm back, but it's not working still. I thought that it would work on this different iPad, but
It's all
we
good, man.
still do not have effects. Unfortunately, StreamYards. Let's work on it. We'll talk to y'all, but I'm happy to see y'all. What's going on?
For sure, for
What's up,
sure,
Ray?
for
What's
sure.
up, Ray?
What up, what up, what up? So, Spills, we had a number of things that happened this past said week, which is always the case in any given episode that we have with This Week in Pop Culture. But this particular week, we did have some additional casting news regarding the Street Fighter movie, which of course we're going to dive into because I know we had talked about some of the casting additions in a prior episode, and we now have some confirmations about some speculations as well as some new additions. So we'll get into that. We also have some sequel news as well. One that is an unexpected sequel that I did not see us having, and then another one that is long awaited, and now we have some movement in that sequel. But aside from that, we did unfortunately have a passing that happened this past week, and we also had some major stuff go down in the world of sports, particularly with the NBA, which we, get into a lot here. So without further ado, shall we dive in?
Let's get it, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, let's get it. So we're going to talk first about an unfortunate passing that we did have this past week. So I'll bring that up now. And before I get into this, actually, I do want to mention to you guys that we do have, for those of you that watch this episode after the fact, we will have things timestamped. So if you want to cut ahead to some of the topics that we talk about today, you can do so after this episode airs. So I will say that. But with that out of the way, we will get into our first topic. As I said, it is starting on a somber note, as we did have a passing this week with our segment known as Legacies Remembered, which saw the passing of a prolific composer, Lalo Schifrin. I apologize if I'm butchering the name, but this occurred this past Thursday, and it was due to complications with pneumonia. Being only the third composer in the history of the Academy of Motion Picture Art and Sciences to receive an honorary Oscar a few years ago, the Grammy-winning composer was the mind behind a variety of scores and themes, including Mission Impossible, Cool Hand Luke, Dirty Harry, and Bullet. Schifrin was 93. So, Spillman, your thoughts on the composer's passing?
I think that this is one of the music score goats to me. Mr. Schifrin, obviously the Mission Impossible theme on its own, it transcends that show. Like I feel like it's more like popular than the actual show. So like whenever you
Yeah,
see like,
yeah, it's iconic.
cartoons or something, if somebody's doing some sneaky stuff and like coming down from the roof,
You
that's
have to play
that's the
that
music.
theme.
You gotta play the music. Like,
You gotta play
it
that
could be
theme.
a SNL movie, they're gonna play that theme. It's just such a timeless theme that it's just crazy. So shouts to him. I think he's one of the greats. I really enjoyed his work. It's sad to see him go, but 93. We don't want anybody to pass on, but 93 years and then being a top person in movie scores is possibly a great thing to do. So I feel like he's up there with I think it's Brian Williams. Is that Brian Williams? Is
Thinking
that
of
the name of
John
the guy?
Williams or Brian
John
Williams?
Williams. That's who I'm
John
saying.
Williams.
John Williams, the other score composer. Like those two guys are neck and neck.
Yeah, yeah, undoubtedly. And to speak further on Mr. Schifrin's just resume, I'll just go down. As I said, he's done a number of scores as well as TV themes. But just to guys give you kind of like the scope of his body of work, he's been nominated 6 times for Oscars, including nods for, as I already mentioned, Cool Hand Luke, The Fox, Voyage of the Dam, The Amityville Horror, The Sting 2, and also got a Best Song nomination for The Competition. The Mission Impossible theme, just talking about, again, the impact of that theme and being behind that, earned him 2 of his 5 Grammy Awards and 3 of his 4 Emmy nominations. And, probably among many of the works that he has is probably the most recognizable among all the things that he is known for. But again, in terms of the scope, whether it's on the small screen or on the big screen, in terms of what he has done for television as well as for films, in terms of his body of his work, is you know so impressive. So, as you said, you never want to see anyone pass away, but 93, not bad. That's
Hey,
quite a
you
lot.
hung in there 93.
But prolific talent, condolences to his family and friends, of course, an incredible legacy that continues to this day. For you guys out there, if you guys want to drop in the comments, what is your favorite Schifrin work, whether it is a TV theme, or whether it is a film score? Let us know, down below in the comments. So now we're going to move on to our next topic. And again, condolences to Mr. Schifrin. We're going to get into some sports news because we have quite a bit to dive into regarding that, as there were a number of things that happened this past said week. Of course, we had some news regarding a player's retirement, and we also had the our results of the NBA championship of our Game 7 winner, of course, being the Oklahoma City Thunder. And last but not least, we had a little thing known as the NBA draft, along with some player movement that happened as well. So we're not going to go into every single thing because there have been a lot of things that have gone down. But Spillman, I'm going to try to give like the Spark Notes version, if you will, and I want to get your thoughts on it. So
Oh, for sure.
going into what we had with the our football end of our sports cooler talk on Wednesday. Quarterback Aaron Rodgers announced on Pat McAfee's show that the upcoming 2025-2026 season would be his last season. He was quoted as saying, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure that this is it. That's why we, him referencing himself and the Steelers organization, just did a 1-year deal. Steelers didn't need to put any extra years on that, speaking of his contract or anything. This was really about finishing with a lot of love and fun and peace for the career that I've had. I mean, I've been playing 20 freaking years." And he goes on to, state that he wanted to wrap up his career playing for a cornerstone franchise of the league with a city that expects his team to win. Just starting off there, before we get into the basketball of it all, Spills, your thoughts on the news of Rodgers in announcing his retirement following this season, and where do you place Rodgers among all-time quarterbacks?
So I think that this news, I feel like it came 2 years too early. I mean, too
Really?
late. I feel like he
Okay.
should have
Oh, okay.
retired when he was
Yes.
leaving Green Bay. Too late, not too early.
Yes.
No, ladies
Okay.
and gentlemen,
I was
too
about to say.
late. He, it doesn't seem like he wants to play football anymore, but they pay him millions of dollars to do so. So it
Yes.
seems like that's what he wants to do. I get that. You know, if I was making millions of dollars to do something, I would definitely want to make as much money possible for as long as possible because, you know, once you stop football, you're not going to make that kind of money again. Um,
I
I
don't
think
know.
that
Go ahead.
he may be a analyst, but it seems like he's not a likable person. Not to say not likable, but it just seems like, you know, I'm not saying he's not likable, but it's just, you know, he's a
Got you.
unique individual. Let's say that he's a unique
Okay, that's
individual.
fair.
So because he's a unique individual, I feel like you know, they don't really give guys who are like him, who kind of buck things and are hard to work with. And he seems very hard to work with. You know, I've never heard of like that. They've just given like, you know, you could look at one of his contemporaries, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. I've never heard of either of those two guys not going to OTAs or the off-season trainings and stuff because they went on a ayahuasca retreat or whatever kind of newfound mumbo jumbo that he's found to, you know, find, you know, stuff within himself. I
Yeah,
get that he's an
yeah.
all-time great. He's one of the all-time greats. I wouldn't put him in the top 10 of quarterbacks. He only won one Super Bowl. He's got a lot of MVPs, and I like his MVPs. But to me, I feel like the real thing about Aaron Rodgers is he didn't really work well with others all the time. So,
Yeah.
you know, since he didn't work well with others, I feel like that's a demerit on him. And you
Oh, the
know,
merit. Wow, I
I feel
haven't
like
heard
that's a
that term in a
demerit.
long
If
time.
you
I
don't
got
work
you though.
well, like, you know, you got to
like
play
it.
well
I
with your
like it.
teammates.
I like it.
I don't like that. You know, I don't like people that don't play well with teammates. You know, and it's kind of ironic also because he did the same things that Brett Favre did in his career. Similarly, you know, he didn't like that they had a heir apparent and waiting for him, and then he went to the Giants and stunk. So, you
Well,
know,
let's be fair. We allegedly, as we know thus far, in comparing him to Favre, we haven't had any other matters that have happened outside of football that would really make him unlikable. So I will
I
say
mean,
that.
he does. He does. I think he does wear that hat. And, you know, I hate to say stuff like that on this podcast, but if you're
I
wearing the
feel
hat,
you.
you know, I can't just say you're a
But I'm
non-person,
just saying,
a
regarding
non.
that alleged like financial matter, like I won't get
Yeah,
into details. So
for
that
sure.
I will not
You
count
can
that
Google. You can
against.
use your Googles,
Yeah,
ladies and
I
gentlemen.
will
Use
not
your
count that
Googles.
against Rodgers, but I will say this. Going into his resume, as you said, he won 4 MVPs. He has one Super Bowl. He has 10, Pro Bowl selections, 4 first team All Pros, and 1 second team All Pro. Uh, you said you didn't have him in your top 10. I at least have him, in my. I actually have him a little higher, and I'll tell you why. The 4 MVPs I feel kind of gets him over the hump. Peyton and Brady both have more Pro Bowl selections and Super Bowl wins than him. So by default, I would place him at 3 if I'm just counting that alone.
That's crazy. But
However,
okay.
however, I'm gonna go on. However, I can't place him above Joe Montana, who has 4 Super Bowls. Yes, he has 2 less Pro Bowl selections, but he has 3 more Super Bowls, and I would count the Super Bowls over those Pro Bowl selections. So that now will place him at 4 for me. So that will place him ahead of Patrick Mahomes right now. And I know
Crazy.
people want to
But
lose it. Hold
okay.
on. I know.
Okay.
I know people want to lose their mind. I'm place him ahead of Patrick Mahomes right now. But when it's all said and done, Patrick Mahomes is very well going to be, right there neck and neck with Tom Brady. And also, he's going to be right there, perhaps even surpassing Tom Brady when it's all said and done. Like, I feel like that is a credit to say you're still an active player and you're a top 5 court QB of all time. Because he already has 2 Super Bowls and he has multiple Pro Bowl selections.
No,
So
whatchamacallit only has one Super Bowl. Rogers only has one.
no, I'm not talking about Rodgers. I'm talking about Patrick Mahomes.
Oh yeah. No, I think Patrick's
That's
got
what I'm
3 or 4.
saying. Like I
He's
had
got 3.
Patrick
Yeah, but yeah,
Mahomes
definitely. Not to
just
interrupt. I'm
under.
sorry.
Yeah, I have him just under Rodgers as it stands today. But when it's all said and done, I I'm sure Patrick Mahomes is going to be neck and neck right there with Tom Brady. With everything that he accomplishes in his career, and he may even surpass him. But I still feel like that's saying something, that you're still an active player. You still haven't played most of your career yet. You're still in the kind of the prime years of your career, and I still have you at number 5. So, but I mean that's where I stand. I'm sure there are other folks that disagree with me. If you disagree with me, drop it down below. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot of opinions down below of how you guys feel of where Rodgers falls. But I mean, you can't deny the number of MVPs, and he has uh, individually, in terms of his statistics, he has, if memory serves, he has the highest QB rating also, thus far, if memory serves. If you want to, if you could check that real quick, Spills. But I feel like that was one of the other distinguishing things in terms of what separates him from other quarterbacks, what he has done to separate himself from other quarterbacks, some big time quarterbacks, is that QB rating that he has been able to secure thus far, as it stands in his career. What
All
he's
right, so here's the list for the top 10 in QBR. Aaron Rodgers, number one at 104.93. Steve
Yep.
Young at 96.81. Tom Brady, 96.62.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning, number four, 95.71. Tony Romo, 95.62. Philip Rivers, 94.53. Drew Brees,
Yeah.
94.27.
That's what I
Kurt
thought.
Warner,
That's what I thought.
93.71. Ben Roethlisberger, 92.69. And Joe Montana, 92.26.
Yeah.
And
So I'm just, that's what I'm saying. Like whether you like, however you feel about him personality wise, you can't deny the individual talent that he is, of what he's been able to do. And I feel like that places him, at least for me, that places him at least at 4 for me, just individually. If he never won a Super Bowl, that would have dropped him down significantly. But the fact that he's been able to accomplish all those individual things, and he at least has a Super Bowl win, that place that helps him get to that spot for me, at least among my list. But again, you guys may feel differently down there. If you do, feel
he's
free.
definitely not in my top five. Like I
Okay, who do you have in your
just,
top 5? I'm curious.
so top five, I've got
Tom
Tom
Brady, of
Brady.
course.
Tom Brady, number one.
Okay.
He's the GOAT.
Okay.
Then I would go Tom Brady, Joe Montana,
Okay.
um, Joe Montana.
Okay.
Then I would go. I guess you got to put Peyton in there because of his counting numbers.
Okay.
Um, then I would have to go. You
So
got
we
to
we
go.
we're switched on that. We're switched on them in Montana
Yeah, I
and
got
Peyton.
Montana over
But
Peyton
we at
because
least both
Peyton.
have them. We at least both have them top 3, but we have ours
Yeah, but I
as
don't have Aaron Rodgers in my top five. And then I've got Patrick Mahomes number four right now.
okay.
Um, if he
Understandable.
retired today,
Understandable. Understandable.
retired today, there's not very many people in the history of football that you
Understandable.
could say are
I
better.
get it. I get it.
Um, and then
Understandable.
number five, Dan Marino. I just can't. I know Dan Marino doesn't have a Super
Okay.
Bowl,
Okay.
but to play in the era that he played in and win the way that he did, you just
Okay.
can't you can't
Okay.
say he's not like one of the top quarterbacks. Then my top six, you might have Vic. I got Vic before Aaron Rodgers personally.
Okay.
Um,
All right.
I got Vic. You got to put people like what's your boy's name? Uh, what was the quarterback? Unfortunately, the quarterback
I know you're not gonna
in
say Ben
Dallas.
Roethlisberger.
I mean, I got Ben Roethlisberger over Aaron Rodgers to me because I feel like
Woo,
Ben Roethlisberger's
woo,
wins big games better.
woo.
I feel like
Okay.
he wins big games, and to me,
I
MVPs
mean, he's
during
my
the
top
regular
10, but
season,
he ain't
I
above
just
Rodgers.
two chips, and he was constantly on great teams, and they did all that. I got to put him there. But
Okay. All right.
what's his name? The quarterback for the Cowboys from the '90s, Aikman. Troy Aikman's
Oh,
got to be
Aikman.
in my
Okay.
top 10. I got
Okay.
Aikman over. I got Aikman over Aaron Rodgers. Even though Aaron Rodgers throw the football better, he don't win. And to me, I love that people love stats. Like looking at this list, even with the QBR rating, it's people at the top of this list that you wouldn't even say are good quarterbacks. Like Matt Ryan is 12, and he is a dog. Like I wouldn't want him. He's not number 12 anything in my book. I would get Matt Ryan up out of here. Chad Pennington is number 13. Whoever cared about that dude? So to me, these counting numbers are great, but I like winners. I like winners. You
Okay.
got to win.
All
If you
right.
got stats and winning, that will put you above people who have more wins than you because, like,
Hey, like
we
I
got to take
said,
in teams.
if he didn't have the Super Bowl win and he didn't
He'd
have,
be way down in the,
he'd be
yeah.
way down. And then on top of that, I can't overlook that QB thing is kind of impressive when you're thinking of all the great quarterbacks that we had, and you're at number one. I can't overlook that. Like that's the only thing. Otherwise, he would be lower for me. And all those names that you gave, I would have them higher than him. But yeah,
Yeah.
those two things helped. But moving on from the gridiron and moving on to the hardwood, Sunday saw the crowning of our NBA champs, of course, with the Oklahoma City Thunder winning Game 7 of the Finals with a 103-91 win against the Pacers. Halliburton unfortunately suffered an Achilles injury early into that game, and SGA finished with a double-double with 29 points and 12 assists, securing his Finals MVP honors. Spills, your thoughts on Game 7, man, on the last, because I think you almost had the Pacers winning and pulling that one out, and didn't.
If he didn't tear his Achilles, I had the Pacers actually winning that game.
Okay.
I feel like once he got hurt, TJ McConnell is a great player. They really went to him for instant offense in a microwave situation. But unfortunately, he's not the distributor or the leader that Halliburton was. And it showed when TJ was the only one that was scoring when he was dribbling the basketball. Um, the Thunder are lucky because they were about to be one of the all-time chokers in the history of basketball. I just, it was amazing that they got to Game 7. It's sad to see again another calf injury turn into an Achilles in front of our eyes. It's horrible to see, but this is unfortunately the game. It reminds me a lot of the game in the '87 finals where. Isaiah Thomas willed the team to a victory, and then they finished up the series with a loss to the Lakers. And he was like limping on the court and like just going through it, but he went into that like pain zone that people go into sometimes. But I think we had a great finals. People were complaining about the size of the markets, and that ain't who on the court. I think that people need to stop talking about stuff that people in board offices care about because I thought that this was a great series. So to me, I think everything went well. How did you feel about the finals?
So I mean, it's no secret. Like, I had the Thunder winning. I didn't have it going 7 games, which I mentioned plenty of times on the show. I didn't see this series going 7 games, but it did go 7 games. I know there are a lot of people out there, yourself included, who felt that Halliburton injury was key in them being the Thunder being able to close out that win and to get the trophy. But I disagree. I know a lot of people, may feel differently, but I disagree in the fact that the Thunder, other than any other team that has been playing all season long, have been the most consistent like this entire time. And when we're talking about being able to play both sides of the ball, we talked about this across any sport. Even if you have the most dynamic offense, defense is going to win you championships. And
Mm-hmm.
time and time again, they have, they're the top statistically across the board in many facets of defensive numbers. They are ranked right there at the top in terms of how they force other teams to turn over the ball. And so um, I feel like the games that they have lost across many of the series are games that they should have won, and it shouldn't have dragged on as long as it did. And I feel like that is more a case of youth than it is of experience. Because had that been like another team, maybe a Denver team, when they in that year that they had won their title, when you have older teams, a lot of older teams know that when you are playing against your opponent, especially when you're playing against your opponent across a series and not in a single game, you have to keep your foot on the gas. Like you have to, make sure that there isn't any space or air left for the opponent to feel like they have an opportunity to win. And a lot of times when you take your foot off the gas and you get a little comfortable, that provides some momentum to your opponent to think, okay, maybe we do have a chance to win. And that happened, I feel like with the Nuggets, that was more so because of the Nuggets and their personnel and them having the grit to be able to carry it all the way as long as it did. But I feel like with the Pacers, I feel like they honestly, and I agree that they are the better team, but I feel like they got too comfortable and they allowed many of those games that they lost in that series to be losses when they could have been wins. Um, so that's how I feel. I know there's some folks out there who disagree. I know the statistic that's out there where you have with Halliburton, apparently, where if he scores like 20 plus, 20 or more points, they have a very high likelihood of winning statistically.
Hmm.
And even in that game, he was already off to a fast start in that regard. Of hitting his first couple of shots, even in that first quarter. So, you could arguably say he was well on his way to scoring 20 points had he not been injured. But I just don't see the Thunder wasting that opportunity after everything that they had been through this entire season and the series and fights that they had been in. I mean, there were a couple of series where they were able to convincingly beat their opponent, but that Nuggets series was a dogfight, and I felt like that was their test of them really truly assessing. Okay, are we ready to take the next step this year, or are we going to fall into our same habits of having a decent regular season and then falling short again? So I think that was that litmus test, was that series against the Nuggets. But staying on the topic of the NBA, as I mentioned, we did have, a little other event that happened known as the NBA draft that occurred across Wednesday and Thursday with our first round and with our second rounds. Additionally, in that time, the results of the NBA Finals also created ripples across the league as we had moves to respective rosters across the board. So I want to get into those moves that were made. And as I said, I'm not going to go into every single detail, but I just wanted to give some bullet points, if you will, and then Spill, I'll punt it over to you. So in terms of the draft, some draft highlights. The Duke's basketball starting five all got drafted. 9 of the first 10 picks were freshmen in the draft. 23 international players were drafted, a record 6 of which were Frenchmen out of the total international players. We have 4 NBA Academy alumni that were selected. And in terms of trades that have happened, we have the Wizards pick of Walter Clayton Jr. being traded to the Jazz for the between the Rockets and the Phoenix Suns. We had the Rockets receive Kevin Durant and the Suns receive Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks. The 2025 first round pick, number 10 2025 first round draft pick, the number 59 draft pick via OKC in the second round, 2026 second round picks, 2030 second round pick, and a 2032 second round pick. Between the Boston Celtics and the uh, Portland Trailblazers, we had the Boston Celtics receive Anthony Simmons and 2 future second round picks. The Portland Trail Blazers got Drew Holiday. With the New Orleans Pelicans, we had Jordan Poole get traded to their team along with Sadiq Bey and second round draft pick. And in return, the Wizards got CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and a future second round pick. Uh, Also, with the Celtics, we saw the Celtics trade Kristaps Porzingis and a future second round pick for Georges Niang, and a future second round pick. And with the with the Cavs, we had Alonzo Ball get traded to the Cavaliers in return for Isaac Okoro getting moved over to the Bulls. And I don't think I mentioned this, but among that trade that we had between the Atlanta Hawks and the Boston Celtics involving Kristaps Porzingis, there was another team involved in that where the Brooklyn Nets got a Terrence Mann and a 2025 first round draft pick, which would be a number 22. So Spillman, there were a lot of movements that were happening across the draft, or say teams that received their picks within the draft. But we also had some movement in terms of personnel that are existing players in the NBA. Whichever you want to dive into first, what were your thoughts on what occurred?
Well, let's start with both of our teams not really making any noise in the draft.
Sure, yeah.
We are a we're a cool franchise. Surprisingly, we're not talking about the team getting sold. I don't think that. Did we talk about that last week
We
or?
talked about it last week, yes.
Oh, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just trying to make it all Lakers or Warriors all the time. Yeah, we didn't really make much noise. I guess Cooper Flag is the odds-on favorite. He seems to be ready to be in the pros, especially with the fact that he's younger than all of the people that he's playing against, but is clearly head and shoulders above everyone. I think he will translate to the NBA kind of okay. I worry about his size because he is a big player, but he's not
particularly strong.
Particularly strong or particularly fast or anything. So we'll see where that takes him. But I'm interested to see what his game matures to like in the NBA with more spacing and more pace. I think that will just help. Like a guy like him seems to be, I think with rookies, oftentimes, especially with bigs, some of them are like deers and they can just bound down the court. And I feel like that's really where his game is. And if you can do that, generally you can be very successful. It's hard to stop somebody like that because, you could be bigger and stronger than him, but if he's faster than you, speed kills.
Yeah. I was gonna say I do like his grit and his poise. Especially just as you mentioned, for a player of his age, a lot of times, you have players that are that age that like to defer a lot. And despite the fact that he is younger and he's among the youngest as a first round, as a number one draft pick, he's someone who shows a lot of maturity and is very much a leader on a given team and is very competitive. I'll never forget when they were showing the clips of the Olympics of the USA team, and they had many of those players playing against the pros. And he was among that team that was helping to train, to scrimmage against the pros for the Olympics. And he didn't, play like someone who was, intimidated by playing against the pros. Like he, was demonstrating a lot of poise with someone his age of playing against, players of that stature. And, for anybody else that might be a little daunting, but for him, you couldn't really tell that was something that was, that was kind of throwing him off. He was scoring, against a lot of those pros in those scrimmages. And I mean, if you can look it up, there are a lot of clips in which, he was able to hold his own even then before he even stepped foot on a college on a college court as a Duke player, where he was demonstrating, the skills that he brought to the table. Um, One of the things that have been a deterrent, or things that has been criticized about his game, is his consistency as a shooter, and that was one of the things that he did work on this past year with Duke, and has demonstrated that he can be a consistent scorer. So I feel like that versatility is really going to play in his favor. He is someone that can get down the floor, and he has, good lateral movement where he's able to get down the floor. Um, you can plug him in at a lot of different, quite a few positions, and I feel like it can be a mismatch problem for other against other teams because of his versatility and what he can do on the floor. So that was not very much a surprise for me, but I will say, in terms of the drafts themselves, there were some players that were drafted kind of high and those that were drafted kind of low. His teammate Canupo, great player, but I'm not sure that I would have drafted him at number 4. I felt like that was
Hmm.
kind of high. Um, he, unlike Flag, he doesn't have a lot of skills that really jump out at you. And don't get me wrong, like, he's, a solid scorer. He has a lot of upside because he's also young. He's a freshman. But I feel like you want to have a player that has a definitive package, offensive package, in terms of what they're able to do as a offensive threat, or as a they have tools that they can utilize as an offensive threat or as a defensive threat, or both, if we're counting players that are in that top 10. And I feel like, because of the, I hate to say, the Flag effect, that, of having him on that team, where a lot of those that starting five were freshmen, um, it helped raise the value even of his teammates that he had on that team. And it's not to say that I don't feel like he shouldn't be in the draft. I'm not saying that. I just saying that I feel like he was too high. Like, I feel like he should have been in the teens, or like in the 20s as a draft pick, versus, number 4. The same goes for Kamen, who was at number 10. I wouldn't have had him, in the top 10. I would have had him, slightly lower. Having Walter Clayton Jr. as number 18, that was shocking that he was that low. We're talking about the, guy who was right there in the national championship, and was
Hmm.
right, was right there. And you're telling me that you don't have him in your top 10, that he's demonstrating that he can be a winner and he could play at that level. Um, that was kind of weird to me. I would have had him in the top 10. I know he doesn't have a lot of skills that kind of like scream at you. Like, he doesn't have like the sexy skills, right? Having, insane bounce, or having, insane handles. But, he's a solid player that, can get the job done. And I feel like, also, due to him not being a freshman, of him being an upperclassman, that kind of hurt him. Um, and
How do you
then,
feel about the two guys from Rutgers? They didn't even make the tournament. They're the top uh, top 6 in the draft. I get that they're like great players,
yeah, the
but
upside. I feel like a lot of this draft was a lot of upside and potential versus what you actually brought to the table. Because here's another thing, and speaking to that, and mind you, these are two players that are upperclassmen. These two players, and I want to get into their stats, were second rounders. So we have Maxim Reynald from Stanford. He averaged a double double, 20.2 points a game, 10.8 rebounds a game. And he was in the second round. He was, what was it, number 42, which is wild to me. And number 35, slightly higher, you have Johnny Boom from Auburn, also upperclassman, 18.6 points a game, also 10.8 rebounds a game, a double double, and you're telling me that you're placing him this low down on the draft. So I feel like there's a there's a trend, I hate to say it, of ageism across the draft, where it doesn't matter how impressive your stats are. If you're not a lower classman, a freshman or a sophomore, then that's going to count against you, which is weird because considering the current state of college sports where they're placing a lot of value in keeping, having players stay, you would think that that would also translate over to the league where we we still would have, some underclassmen who in any other circumstance would try to hop into the draft, but because of the circumstances now might stay. It still seems like we still, regardless of the way college basketball has changed, it hasn't translated over to the draft where they're placing value on experience and the skills that you've developed versus your potential and your upside. So um, I'm trying to think if there was anything else that came to mind regarding that draft. Well, I guess I'll get into the trades now. Were there any, trades that have happened the past couple of days that have been kind of head scratchers for you where you're like, really? You guys did that? Or have there been ones where where you've been like, wow, that's really great. That's really a nice move that you guys made.
I actually have to say there were two trades in particular that I think were really great. I think that the
Okay.
Drew Holiday trade was really great, and I think that the Kristaps Porzingis trade was really great because that means that the Celtics are dead again, ladies and gentlemen. The Celtics are terrible yet again. They will not be a championship contender any longer, and the Lakers and our new ownership can move forward with tying them again for the lead in most championships of all time in the National Basketball Association. So to me, sure, KD going to Houston may be interesting. I think KD's too old to be good in a championship level any longer. They moved a lot of pieces for them while keeping the good, quote unquote, the good pieces. They got rid of Jalen Green, who seems to have a lot of stuff going on off the court that will distract him from championship basketball. And Dylan Brooks, who is kind of a dog and no one likes him. But to me, the most important thing is that the Green Monster is not a monster anymore. I guess they poured water on him or took their pot of gold or whatever you want to say. But I'm happy to see that the Celtics have dismantled a championship franchise just because one person got hurt. I think that they should have read it up and paid those guys. I think they should have tried to see what happens when Tatum comes back in 2027. And I think they should have just focused on getting because I think that team could win the Eastern Conference Finals, go at least to the Eastern Conference Finals. Drew Holiday, he's a great player. It's kind of sad to see him the first one out. It's kind of like first hired, last hired, first fired. I feel like it's that kind of situation. So kind of sad to see them in new places, but happy to see that the Celtics are dogs again. Woof!
I didn't expect you to feel that threatened by the Celtics, so that is interesting.
Always, always. These are rivalries, ladies and gentlemen. We may not talk about how much of a rivalry it is, but like when Peter Griffin sees that chicken, it's on site. We don't like those people. We just don't like them. So to me, to see them make a blunder like that and take their foot off the gas, what's the point of being the Boston Celtics if you ain't trying to win championships? No one wants to play for y'all. Like, you should keep those players. I think that they could have done something with Drew and Porzingis in the next season. The East is wide open. I don't, they might could have snuck back into the finals if they kept that team together, but they decided not to try to sneak back in the finals because I don't think that even without Jason Tatum, that they're that much worse than any of those teams in the East. They're not going to lose to the Knicks again, I don't think.
So I will say this: it is on one end, it is a little confusing, getting rid of those players because it's been demonstrated when we're talking about the Celtics that when Jason Tatum is not playing on that team, that they've still been able to show that they can win games, a lot of games. So there's that. But on the business side of it, it's understandable of how much money they would have saved of moving those players because, I mean, one of your franchise players is going to be out, for that season. So do you really want to be held to those two contracts when we're talking about players that while they were a part of your title run, they are getting a little, a little older. One, your big man with Porzingis has a tendency to be a little brittle. Let's be honest, like in terms of being injury prone. So, do you really want to shell out that amount of money when there's a potential for him to get injured this coming season when he's probably going to be playing more minutes now that you don't have Jason Tatum playing? And when we're talking about Drew Holiday, he's getting, a little older. So you want to you take advantage of that opportunity of getting rid of those contracts and bring in, some new life, some younger players. You're not getting rid of, you're not uh, uh, tearing out your entire lineup, but you're at least, moving some pieces that can actually provide you an opportunity to get some additional players in the meantime while you're waiting for Tatum to get back. I will say though, Spills, is that when we're talking about Walter Clayton Jr., I'm disappointed that the Wizards did not keep that pick because I feel like that would have been a nice pick to keep Clayton, especially with the moves that we made for McCullough. So, I feel like he would have been a good backup for those players, a good younger backup for those players. But unfortunately, he's now with the Jazz. I think that's going to be a pick that's going to come back to bite us, where we're going to be like, he could have been with us and he could have been, a solid addition to our team. And he's a winner, which is what we need. We need a winning mentality versus the mentality that we have. So I feel like it would have been a good energy and vibe that he would have brought to that team, and a mentality that's brought to that team. You already mentioned this about the Houston Rockets. Kevin Durant, I feel like is past his point of winning another title. And don't get me
Mhm.
wrong, I love Kevin Durant, but he's getting older, and I don't feel like he is at a point where he. And I know a lot of people probably think I'm crazy for saying this, but I'll say it anyway. That him being a third option on a championship team. I
Yeah,
just I
I
just
agree
can't
with that.
see it. I just can't see it. Because we're talking about someone. If we're talking about being a title contender, we're talking about someone who can play both sides of the floor. Is a two-way player. While he still is effective offensively, I don't have him at that same caliber that he used to be as a defender, of being able to, slide his feet and being able to, defend those really athletic wings that we have out there. And I don't feel like, he is someone that you could drop down in the post and have defend, our really strong, front court players. So that kind of puts him in a disadvantage in either case. Don't get me wrong; he's still an effective offensive player. He's going to get butts in the seats because people love Kevin Durant. But if we're just talking about um, just the likelihood of him getting back to the title, I don't see it. I really don't see it at this point. Getting into there was another one that I wanted to get into outside of the Boston Celtics, and that
Oh,
would
that
actually
terrible Jordan Poole trade. You want to talk about how they like pushed with CJ
I like
McCollum?
that
I
though.
feel so
I like
bad
I
for
like that. I
CJ.
like that trade though
Poor
because
CJ.
when we're talking about Jordan
He
Poole's a
needed to get
talented
out of
player,
this town.
but he
Yeah.
needed to get out of here. Like he was the type of player that struck me as a type of player, and even in watching the games where he was about getting his numbers, and that was about it. And outside
Hmm.
of like actually winning games, and don't get me wrong, like we didn't have the best personnel, and he was one of our top players, but um, it didn't seem like even in games that I went to, whether they were games that I watched or games that I physically was there for to observe, it just seemed like he was going through the motions a lot of the time, where he didn't really, care much about being on that team. And I mean, it's also been speculated in other stories of his attitude and in terms of his commitment and being a part of that team. So if he, You move him on to the Pelicans, and now that we have CJ, I feel like we have a player that brings some veteran experience, but also brings a winning attitude. I'll never forget uh, in his time that he was with the Pelicans of him pushing what's his name, number one draft pick,
Zion.
Zion, pushing Zion and trying to put some fire under him, so to speak, to really maximize on his potential. And I feel like that will translate over well to the Wizards with the players that they have there. We may not be obviously a title contender, but I feel like we will at least be respectable
Hmm.
as a team with him, him being a part of that lineup. The last one that I wanted to get into, which happened most recently, and this is with Lonzo Ball. I do like Lonzo Ball with the Cavaliers. Like I do like having him with that franchise, and I feel like he will provide that team a lot more. Um, what is it? Not versatility, but it will deepen.
Defensive grit. Yeah.
Not even outside of defensive grit. I'm just saying lineup wise, it's going to make that team a lot deeper by having him
Hmm.
on that team versus what they had before. You may disagree, but that's how I feel. In terms of the lineup that they currently have now, as it stands, you can plug him in there now as a starter, but I feel like he's enough of a team player where he would be willing to, come up as a second string point guard and give you a lot of good minutes as a player, especially on a team of that caliber that has the potential to come out the East.
Yeah. And I agree with that sentiment. I just want to say, they have a very small backcourt and they need some size in that backcourt
They
because
do.
that was very apparent
They
during
do.
the playoffs
Yeah.
that they were just searching out Donovan and the other point guard because they're just too small, and unfortunately, they can't guard
Guard.
nobody. And that works in the regular season. They ran up a bunch of wins, but if you need to get a stop or you need to stop them, it's hard to do when you need to score a bucket or something when they can just be like, "Hey, we're just going to take these people out of it." So
Yeah.
very interesting to see.
For sure, for sure, for sure. So that's going to do it for what we have with our sports cooler talk. What say you guys out there? How did you feel about the Game 7 of the NBA Finals? How do you feel about Aaron Rodgers and announcing that he's going to be retiring after this coming NFL season? And how do you feel about the NBA draft and some of the personnel moves that have been made this in this past I guess past few days? Let us know in the comments your thoughts on that, and if you like some of the moves that have been made. But that's going to do it for Sports Cooler Talk. We're now going to get into our film and TV talk, which is our main topic today. And just to dive in, as you will know, whenever we have our main topic, we always have it here in the background. Um, and this is pertaining to an unexpected sequel as well as a long awaited one. So we do have something to place up here first before we get into the Street Fighter of it all. We'll begin first on Wednesday, as it was confirmed by Deadline that screenwriter Aaron Sorkin, writer for The Social Network, has written a sequel script for the film uh, that he intends to direct this go around as a feature for Sony. That being, The Social Network 2. According to the story, while the original film was adapted from Ben Mesrich, a book, The Accidental Billionaires, the sequel will be inspired by a series of articles by Jeff Horowitz, um, who wrote for the Wall Street Journal, known as the Facebook Files, which was published back in October 2021, which explored the harms caused by the social network. Meanwhile, on Friday, after much anticipation and impatience from fans, writer filmmaker Matt Reeves took to social media to reveal that the script for the Batman 2 had been completed. Featuring a blurred black and white photo of the script with the bat on the cover, the post featured Reeves and his co-writer Matson Tomlin in the background with a caption that reads "Partners in Crime." with fighters in parentheses. So Spillman, your thoughts on the prospect of having either sequel?
Let's start with the social network.
Sure.
The beginning of the story of Facebook is a interesting story. It's great. They went rags to riches and they started printing money. But I feel like the social network too, it either can go where they go real nice on these guys, or they actually, really talk about how bad
Dive in,
they
yeah,
they have affected culture writ large.
yeah.
Um, we don't talk about how algorithms be brainwashing people and all that other stuff. I don't want to get on my third eye open talk because this is not the platform that we do. Maybe we'll come out with a show where we can talk about the third eye open stuff, but the social network too is a very interesting topic to me. I think that um, maybe it'll help some of us in this world where kind of like when Nobel's brother passed away, and then he saw, and everybody thought Nobel had passed away. And in case you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, Nobel invented TNT, and then they said all these terrible things about him. So he was like, maybe I should change how I'm living because everybody thinks I'm a merchant of death. So to me, I think this is very interesting. Would like to see where they go with it because the post-credit scripts from the original social network, what they all were doing at Facebook and some of these other places are kind of interesting. How do you feel about the social network too?
So I guess I'll say this, Spills, is when we're talking about the social network, initially, if I was told that we would years ago that we would be getting a sequel to the social network, I would say, okay, all right, fine, great. But just as you said, there has been a lot that's happened in the time since we've had the first film, and I feel like doing a sequel to this film would have a lot of merit because a lot has happened in the way of social media, particularly with Facebook. So there's a lot of fertile ground there, so to speak, to tell stories that are relevant to today's world with many facets of our lives, whether we're talking about how the algorithm works, just as you were talking about, or how it has affected every other facet of our lives with shopping and how it affects purchase patterns of people and how it affects how people vote and all of these different things that people kind of underestimate when we're talking about social media platforms. And I feel like there's a lot of opportunity there to discuss the influence and the impact that that platform has had, for better or for worse. So you know, I'm glad that Sorkin is coming back. If for those of you that aren't aware, he, as I mentioned just in the story, he did do the screenplay for the original film. So I do like the fact that you are bringing the same team members back for the sequel. You don't have David Fincher, so I don't know if that's going to have it's going to have it's going to be noticeable of not having his direction in this film, because he was the one who directed the first original film with Sorkin writing it. But I mean, as I said, I do like that you have at least the person with the mind behind a lot of what was spoken on screen there, because as any of you guys will know, when we're talking about Sorkin, he always has uh, very fascinating dialogue in a lot of the films that he has, in terms of the flow and um, how they mesh with the characters that he writes for the screen. So very interested in that. Getting into the Batman side of it, was it anything particularly exciting for you in that regard, or
I saw that they might be adding someone to play Talia al Ghul. That seems interesting.
okay,
But I'm interested in this Batman 2 script. I would like to see what they do to try to incorporate this Batman into the new Superman universe and the new DC universe that they've established. But I feel like they may go into a more darker Batman, and dark, gritty Batman is the thing that everyone
Uh,
loves. But
place it
I
up here for you
just,
guys. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah,
So
I
let's see
just think
the
that
original picture.
it's kind of interesting. But sure, we'll see. Um, because this
But no, I
picture,
mean, I'll say this, Spills. Let me see if I can make this picture a little more visible for you guys. Um,
there we go.
there we go. So in speaking of this film, there's been much that has been said in terms of uh, when will we get this film, who the villain might be, and all of that stuff. So um, I'm glad that we finally have some official proof that this film is going forward, because I know there had been a lot of speculation that either it's not going to get made because of a number of factors that might be happening behind the scenes that are alleged, but and even if they do manage to get it, will they be able to keep the same folks in front of the camera with your cast, because they can't wait around forever for this, for you to put the script together. So I'm happy that there is some credible confirmation that things are moving forward, but I'm still a little skeptical because, uh, and this has been mentioned, so I won't take in credit for it myself. This has been mentioned elsewhere. I'll give a shout out to John Campia, because it was mentioned on the show, and it is a point to be made, is that when we're talking about a script, yeah, we have the script out there, but a lot of times scripts go through drafts, and just because we have the script out there now doesn't mean that this is going to be the script that they go with. So like
For sure.
you may very well place a script out there, and James Gunn and Peter Safran, that all the folks over at DC Studios and Warner Brothers read it. All the people that are there in those decision making roles read the script, and they may have notes of saying, okay, keep this, don't like this, can we change this, can we tweak this, we can't afford to do this, so we're going to have to adjust this. It may very well go through another draft, and who knows how long that will take, because it took this long just to get the initial draft that we now have now that was placed in this post. So who's to say how long it will take for another draft?
Hmm.
So hopefully what we have here is enough for them to green light and to be able to move forward and get the production started, so that way it isn't delayed any further um, than what it needs to be. But in the same breath, I mean, I'd rather have a film that is ready to go, instead of one where they're still trying to place the track on the ground as the movie's being made, which a lot of times can make the movie chaotic, and when you get the finished product, is not as good as the original. So
Yeah.
I'd rather them take their time, as much as impatient as many of us I'm sure are. I'd rather them take their time in making sure that this can be as good as it can be. Um, that's how I feel. So now getting into the what we were talking about with Street Fighter, and then again, guys, let us know in the comments how you feel about those two films, whether we're talking about the social network sequel that was announced, or whether we're talking about the Batman 2 film that appears to be moving forward in the right direction now that we have a script that has been completed. Let us know in the comments. But continuing on with our film and TV talk, I wanted to, of course, dive into Street Fighter, as there had been news surrounding casting additions that we did have with this video game adaptation. We'll start first with News that came on. Let's see. News that came on Monday. So Monday, it was revealed via Deadline, which you see here in the picture, that Kalina Liang would be playing Chung Li, and on Tuesday, 50 Cent confirmed on his social media that he would be playing Balrog. Thursday, we had the news via Deadline that the comedian Andrew Schultz would be added to the ensemble as Dan Habiki. Now, we also had some confirmations on Thursday, and this was via the Hollywood Reporter, that many of those roles that we had speculated a couple of weeks ago are now confirmed. Now knowing that Jason Momoa will in fact be playing Blanca, and Roman Reigns will in fact be playing Akuma. So, Spills, your thoughts on the new casting additions and the casting confirmations?
Like I said last time we talked about this, I told you Roman Reigns is going to be Akuma. He don't need to talk. Roman Reigns ain't good at talking, but he looks scary. And he looks like you could put him in shadow and he could do a move and you'd be dead. So, I just want to tag myself as correct. Thank you, ladies and
Yeah,
gentlemen. I
you
know
did.
you guys are
You
keeping score out there.
did.
Um, uh, I just hope that the girl that's playing Chung Li got the thighs, because that's what we all love Chung Li for, is the thighs. We do have the karate moves that she does, but we got to see her be Chung Li. 50 paying Balrog is very interesting. 50 Cent has always seemed like a great value Mike Tyson to me, and that's exactly what Balrog is. So I'm excited to see that. That's all the jokes I have for these castings. I'm gonna turn it to you, Brandon.
Fair enough. Fair enough, man. I mean, I'll go back to Reigns as Akuma. Um, I understand what you're saying. He does have the look to be Akuma, but again, when we're trying to be true to the nature of the game, I just can't realistically buy that Roman Reigns is doing, spin kicks and flips and uppercuts. Like, I can more easily buy him playing Sagat, because at least that fighting style that Sagat has, would translate more believably. It would translate more believably to what Roman Reigns can already do as a wrestler. So that was my only point in having him play Sagat, is because that would just make more sense. And to your point, you don't really need to have Sagat say that much. He just has an eye patch and he can just be intimidating. He doesn't really need to say a lot of dialogue. And I still feel like he would still get that relationship between him and Ryu, where Ryu and Sagat have history, just like Ryu and Akuma have history. You can still have that dynamic between them without now trying to make me believe that Roman Reigns can do martial arts now. Like,
Well, I agree with that, but you don't have $18 million to do this movie, do you? Because that's how much they will probably have to pay Roman Reigns to shave his head, because he's not going to put a ball cap on. And Roman Reigns make his money with that pretty hair, man. He's not going to shave his head bald. They could find a bald guy to be Sagat. Like I get what you're saying, but Roman Reigns, that's a pretty dude. He pretty. He gonna have his hair. They're gonna gel it up. It's gonna look very. They're gonna dye it. Then he's gonna be on the cover of like Teen Vogue or something with the red hair dye job. The lady's gonna love that. I don't understand why you're not seeing it. I feel like you're worried about the martial arts, as if that has ever stopped anybody from making a movie. Tons of people don't know how to do martial
I
arts.
get that, and I understand where you're coming from. He has the look of Akuma, but I don't buy him in being able to believably do the fighting style of Akuma. I could at
He just
least
does like this. So you're saying he can't do the lotus pose? He can't do
he basically
yeah.
look. He basically. You correct me if I'm wrong. For those of you, because for those of us that play Street Fighter, Akuma is basically a more
He's
souped
scary
up
Ryu. He's
yeah,
scary
he's a
Ryu.
more
Yeah.
souped up version than Ken and Ryu. He has the same move skill set as them. So we need to have someone who can do the same. Considering the actors that you have playing Ryu, we need to have someone who can, logically do, that same type of fighting style as Ryu. So it's going to be kind of weird unless they have him training to somehow believably be a martial artist. It's going to be weird.
I mean, he is a martial artist. Wrestling is a martial art. You're just thinking of Eastern martial arts, ladies and
You know what I
gentlemen.
mean?
He is
I'm
a
talking about like
grappler for sure.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But,
That's why I
I'm
would
not
buy
worried
him.
about that.
That's why I would buy him as Sagat because at least with that, in terms of that style that Sagat has, there's a lot of grappling involved. So you could logically have, that the wrestling stuff translate to the style that the Muay Thai style that Sagat has. Like I could buy that. But if we're talking about like, acrobatic martial arts, unless you have him, training to kind of adjust and to fight that way, I don't know, man. And I'm cool with all the other casting additions that we have so far because apparently I think
You just don't like Roman Reigns. I mean, most people don't like Roman Reigns. That's why he's never popped out
fine.
of the
He's
WWE. That's
fine.
real. That's
Roman
real.
Reigns
But
is
again, the
fine.
man got pretty hair. They need a
Roman
dude
Reigns
with
is
pretty
fine.
hair in the movie.
I have no issue with Roman Reigns. I'm just saying, like, if we're going to do a video game adaptation, let's do a decent video game adaptation. Don't bother doing another Street Fighter movie if you can't try to do your best to capture someone who can effectively adapt those moves that we have for that character in the game to the movie. That's it. Like I don't understand why that's like such a such a major thing. That seems like something that's like very obvious and makes total sense to me. But maybe you guys out there feel differently too. Maybe you're cool with Roman Reigns being Akuma. Maybe you think he can believably play Akuma. I have no,
All
like I
he has
said,
to do, ladies and gentlemen, this is what move he's going to do. He just got to be spooky. He's going to be spooky most of the movie. They're not going to let him talk. They're just going to show him. They're going to be like, "Ah, Kuma." They're going to talk about him. Then he's going to like turn around and do that pose that he does. Then the lights going to turn out because all of his moves you don't actually see him. So I don't know what you're talking about. Like to me, it sounds like you've never played
oh,
Akuma in a Street Fighter game.
I
Because
played
sure,
Akuma's
he
like one of
has
my
some of
favorite
the
players.
moves of Ryu, but
That's
that's not what
one
we come
move
there
that he
for.
has. That is one move that he has. All
But
the
that's
other
what we all
moves
want
that
to
he
see
has
because it's one of the
mirrors.
cheesiest moves in all of
All the
history.
other moves that he has mirrors Ken and Ryu.
Yeah, except for that one move where he cheeses you and he does the move and the lights turn out, then you be dead. And you'd be like, how did he even kill us? I didn't see it happen. It just, the lights turned out, then there was a glowing Japanese script that I can't even
Yeah, I
read.
know. He
So
teleports across the screen. I know. He teleports across the screen, grabs you, and the lights go out. I get it. I understand. I
that's a
get it.
very wrestling thing to do. It's like, he did his wrestling super move. You did. So he's going to do that 3 times in the movie. The first time he's going to kill somebody, they're going to be like, oh my God, they killed him. Then the second time he's going to do it to like Ken, and Ken is almost going to pass away, and then we're going to be sad. Then he's going to try to do it to Ryu, and then Ryu's going to block it and save the day. So you heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to see that move 3 times, and it's going
He's
to be more
spoiling
and more
the movie,
intense each
folks. He's
time.
spoiling the movie.
I wrote the movie. This is what I did. I wrote the movie, ladies and gentlemen.
But again, what do you guys think out there? Let us know in the comments. What do you guys think of the confirmations? I do like Jason Momoa as Blanca. I know we were talking about that before. It could have been M. Bison or Blanca. And then, of course, with the additions that we have with and we didn't even talk about with Dan. I do like Schultz as Dan. That's going to
No,
be
I don't
hilarious.
like Schultz. I don't like
That's going to
Schultz.
be
He
hilarious.
stinks.
But I'm saying in terms of the character, it tracks in terms of how
Yeah.
goofy Dan is, and to have a comedian playing that character, like a character who believes that like they are that guy, but they aren't. So like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that can be that should be pretty entertaining of having him in that role. So. But yeah, let us know in the comments what your thoughts on the confirmations of casting additions from before and the new ones that we got this week. That's going to do it for us here at This Week in Pop Culture. I'm going to punt it over to Spills. Spills, can you tell folks where they can find you?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me on Truly Spill at Instagram. I'm there all the time. Um, we could talk about lots of things. I just want to also tell you shout outs to everybody at the Lakers organization because they're trying to say LeBron's going to leave. So I'm going to be sad. Hopefully, we don't have to talk about that next week, but terrible.
So again, as always, I want to thank Spills for hopping on as a co-host for this week in pop culture. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, co-creator of Movies and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Choi ENT on X and Brandon Choi _ENT on Instagram. With that out of the way, be safe out there. Thank you so much for watching and see y'all soon. Peace, y'all.
Peace, guys.